This month marks 46 years since Mount St. Helens erupted, and this comes as geologists hope to add more equipment to track our state's volcanoes. And meteorologist Abby Aconi is here with more on that. Abby?
Yeah, so we have 5 volcanoes in our state. So take a look at this map. It includes Mount Baker, Glacier Peak, Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, and of course, Mount St. Helens. And geologists for quite some time have been making efforts to add more tracking equipment onto these volcanoes. So to talk more about this, let's bring in Holly Weiss-Racine, a geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey's Cascades Volcano Observatory. Holly, we're so glad you're with us. Where does our state stand with putting this equipment on volcanoes? And do we have enough seismometers to track if an eruption is imminent?
Good morning. Thank you so much for bringing this up, especially in May, because May in Washington is Volcano Awareness Month. So right now we have a lot of equipment on our volcanoes, but the density of equipment varies depending on volcano. So Mount St. Helens is the most instrumented volcano in the Cascade Range. It even has, it's a great testing ground for new experimental equipment. So Mount St. Helens is very well instrumented. Mount Rainier is also very well instrumented. It has a really unique set of instruments that is part of the Rainier-Lahar detection system, which helps detect no-notice lahars that could happen in our communities. No-notice lahars being volcanic mudflows that happen without warning. But our other volcanoes in Washington, Adams, Glacier Peak, and Baker, have not as many stations on them and not as many types of equipment. So they have seismometers and in some cases infrasound equipment, but there's a lot of other tools in our toolbox that we would like to get out onto those volcanoes. At Mount Adams, we have a few new stations, but we would like to add more. At Glacier Peak, we are in the process of getting updated permits to be able to put in a few new stations. And at Mount Baker, we're starting to develop the process to apply for permits to add more stations.
So helpful to hear about where our state is at, because I know this has been quite a journey to get this here. Can you rank which volcanoes would be the most impactful and devastating should it erupt in our state?
Absolutely. So each volcano has its own personality and its own style of eruption. And when people think of the next eruption in the Cascades, a lot of times they picture what happened at Mount St. Helens in 1980. And that was actually a really unique eruption with the bulge that grew on the side of the mountain and the lateral blast. That's not the type of eruption we would expect to see at our other volcanoes. Most of them, if they had a large-scale eruption like Mount St. Helens 1980, it would be a vertical eruption. And so a lot of people in communities fear an explosion, and that's really not the hazard that we're dealing with in a lot of our populated communities. Any explosions would stay primarily close to the volcano, and our volcanoes are all on our public lands, Forest Service or Park Service land. So for the most part, that kind of hazard would never reach our populated communities. The hazard that we really need to be prepared for is that volcanic mudflow, the lahar scenario. Lahars are thick, concrete-like slurries that come down our mountains. It's a mixture of from the explosions, the hot material melts the glaciers, that water mixes together with ash and rock, and that creates the slurry that comes down our drainages. They primarily will follow river drainages, and it's a hazard at each one of our volcanoes, but the biggest hazard posed by a lahar is the communities west of Mount Rainier.
And do you think some of these communities like Orting and Puyallup are prepared enough should this lahar flow happen?
Yeah, outreach and education is critical to reaching these communities and letting them know what the risks are, where the risks are, and how to stay safe. And so those communities have done a fantastic job of keeping their communities informed of that information, but we can always do more. So being able to come on broadcasts like this and share that information, let people know where to go to get additional information. You can go to your local emergency management website. Those communities have really robust websites that talk about what the hazards are, where the hazards occur, and even show you your evacuation routes in case a lahar were coming. So just getting out there into the communities and sharing information, letting people know there are lahar hazards that go all the way from Mount Rainier out as far as Puyallup and parts of Tacoma and the port of Tacoma. So education is really key, and those communities have done a really great job of sharing information.
Holly Weiss-Racine with the USGS. This is such an important topic. We appreciate you carving out the time, and yeah, really helpful information.